Welcome to the Grow Down on Soil Health, the podcast where we dig deep into sustainable farming practices that can enhance your land and your bottom line. I'm your host, Dr. Ben West, Executive Director of Farmers for Soil Health, a program dedicated to improving soil health practices like planting cover crops. Today, we'll be demystifying cover crop research, from understanding the findings to how you can apply that knowledge on your farms. We'll examine these projects to identify best practices and to get your cover crop journey started in the right evidence-based direction. Today, I'm joined by Dr. John Fulton, one of the leading precision ag researchers in the country, and he's a professor in the Department of Food, Agricultural, and Biological Engineering at The Ohio State University. John, thanks for being here today. And I emphasize it's kind of a joke amongst us in the academic world, land-grant universities, particularly, that Ohio State University has, developed this brand to be called The Ohio State University. Yeah. Where did that come from? As a Buckeye now, surely you're well steeped in the history of The Ohio State University.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Ben, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's definitely just for everyone's. The is trademarked now by the university, and so it's definitely a marketing aspect. And if you go back really, and it grew out of a couple things. There are the other OSUs in the country, and then we also have Ohio University, which is down in Athens, Ohio, and Southern. And so there was, I think, some legalities there about how do you separate it. In the early 90s, the term "the" got to being used, and then that really got emphasized by the football program as we heard people get on TV and
Does Ohio State have a football program?
Well, they're working at it.
Okay.
They're working at it. We had a great year today, but people are mystified why we're still not in the playoffs currently. But yeah, so it really stems from a marketing ploy to differentiate from some of the other universities, not just across the country, our fellow land-grant universities, but in particular some universities there in the state.
Yeah, well, it's easy to poke fun at the Ohio State University, but every university has things you can make fun of. I'm a product of the land-grant university system and worked in the land-grant university system for decades. And it truly is one of the things that made and makes the United States such an agricultural powerhouse. But it also has its little peculiarities. And so, now I can appreciate the land-grant university system and make fun of it at the same time, because we have places like the Ohio State University that.
Well, if you go to my Auburn days, and I still get heckled about that, it was the War Eagle. Are you the War Eagles or are you the Tigers? So these right. Things just kind of go wherever you go here with the land grants.
It really, academia is its own little culture, yeah. And I loved it and do love it. But it is so you're a professor. You've been in academia, your whole career. It's and you teach. You do research and you have an extension program. It's really, really demanding. I mean, I did not realize the workload that faculty have until I got into the game myself. And, it's always amazing when I would go to the office on Saturday and Sunday, usually the parking lot was half full. I mean, it is a rigorous career. It's hard to find time for fun, but what do you do for fun?
Well, at this stage of my life, I have 2 kids, and obviously my wife and I spend a lot of time chasing them around. It's 24/7, and typically in a night we have 3 to 4 different functions that those kids have to be at. My oldest, Luke, he's a junior. Fortunately, he drives now, so that's been a big help to us.
It's like freedom. It's like that scene in Braveheart. Freedom when your oldest kid gets their driver's license the first time. It's like freedom, finally.
it's that, but then on the flip side of that, you worry, well, are we going to get to the next event on a timely fashion? So there's a lot of texting that goes on in our household, a little group text that we have. It's pretty active during the day about, let's not forget this, or did we do that, those kinds of things. But it's fun. It adds to the
And your
flavor.
youngest is how young?
Seventh grade.
Seventh grade. You have a very short window, So I have a senior in college and a senior in high school. I'm almost done, and man, those last few years go really fast. I mean, you're going to wake up tomorrow, and your youngest can be graduating from high school. What are you going to do for fun then?
We'll see when that time comes. Right now, we're focused on today and the next few years and getting our son kind of acclimated. Are we going to college, or what those next steps are after high school? But it's fun. They're heavily involved in sports, and obviously we show cattle, show horses. I mean, it's every weekend we got some kind of activity going on. So it's challenging, but it's fun.
It is one of the busiest times of life. That time when you have two kids in school, later in school, so they're involved in everything, and you've got a career. Man, it's a tough time. I loved that period of my life, and I'm glad that it's behind me. So you've been at Ohio State for a while. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get to Ohio State? How did you get into the work that you do, and tell us about what you do.
Yeah.
At Ohio State.
Just a quick, kind of travel down time here. I grew up on a truck farm. We had about, at the time, 3,000 to 3,500 acres, depending on the year, of fruits, mainly vegetables. We grew about 35, 36 different crops on the farm, very heavily in what we would call that locally grown. This was, 50 some years ago.
Any greenhouse part of that? Or
we had a couple greenhouses where we would start things like tomatoes and some of the peppers and things like that, where we would start them in February, if not March, and then they get transplanted in April, just to kind of give us a time frame to get, those early crops at our farm were broccoli and cauliflower were big ones, and then we'd move into strawberries. And by the time summer hit, we were picking sweet corn, which was a huge crop, and then fall hit, we were doing pumpkins. We'd have 100-acre some pumpkins.
Wow.
And then my uncle.
Wait, did you say 100 acres of pumpkins? Oh, that's a big operation.
Yeah. We'd have probably 400 or 500 acres of sweet corn. And again, when I grew up, it was all hand picked. Everything on our farm was almost a lot of it was hand planted in terms of some of the vegetables like the tomatoes and peppers and things like that. I mean, it was a big operation, and we'd hand pick, and we'd use 27 or 30 kids picking sweet corn every morning. We'd start at 6:00, and we may be done by noon. We may go to 2 or 3 in the afternoon, depending on how much sweet corn. And all that was fresh market. All of it was fresh market. And so,
did you direct to consumer, or were you going into distribution channels?
We had our own market right there that we sold a lot of produce through, but we obviously went commercial. The Kroger's, obviously they were in Cincinnati. We had Marsh, which was in Indiana, and then in Columbus we had a couple of clients over there. A lot of that was so we had, the summer, not only strawberries, a lot of that was hand picked and sold through our market, or you come out and pick your own. To our melons and things of that nature. Sweet corn were sold to the kind of regionally there to grocery store.
Yeah. It's interesting what has happened is happening in agriculture nationally. Where I live in West Tennessee in Mid-South, used to be a major fruit and vegetable producing area. I mean, there's a town just north of where I live called Fruitland. It was a major fruit producing area 100 years ago. We have in Humboldt, Tennessee, one of the oldest festivals in the state, the Strawberry Festival. And you can go to the Strawberry Festival and get funnel cakes and shrimp on a stick, chicken on a stick, fried Oreos, everything. What you can't get are strawberries because there's no strawberries grown. I think there's one commercial strawberry producer left in the entire county. It's all gone to row crop production, and all of the fruit and vegetable production has been shifted to California. and places like that. But of course now, where I live, there's a lot of conversation of maybe there's an opportunity for some of these industries to come back, because California's going to be having such challenges in the future with water availability and climate. We're probably going to have to start growing some of those crops elsewhere.
Absolutely. And ironically, in Troy, Ohio, is their strawberry festival, which we helped get, in particular, my uncle helped get started many years ago. And so that's our local festival. And at the time, we supplied a majority of those strawberries, but we had, 3 or 4 other smaller farms in the area as well that supplied that. So.
And are there strawberries grown there in that region now? On a big scale?
Yeah, not on the scale that it used to be. Not on the scale. So
yeah. So now you're what do you do at Ohio State now? And how'd you get from being on the farm to a professor now? So
real quick, my dad was an ag engineer, went to Ohio State. My mom was a teacher, went to Ohio State, and I was one of those kids that guess where I was going to school.
Listen. They're listening. You work for them. You need to use the correct term.
Yeah, the Ohio State.
Yeah, that's right.
But very quickly, I combined both of those. I went to Wittenberg University in Ohio, just a small liberal arts, got math and physics. I knew I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't do that at an undergraduate. Kentucky came and had a really good friend down there and said, you need to come down to Kentucky, look what's happening. And that was right in the mid-90s when the whole GPS, commercialization of GPS had blown up, and all of a sudden we had yield monitoring. It was just exciting times, and Kentucky was one of those institutions that had embraced that early technology, had built kind of a precision ag group. So I went down there, and I spent 9 years down there on my master's and Ph.D. and really got into the technology front, and ultimately that led to going to Auburn University, built a huge precision ag program down there with a huge team. We had a lot of success traveling the Southeast doing workshops, and then in 2013, 2014, a couple institutions, in particular Ohio State, said, could you come up and build us a precision ag program? We feel like we need to kind of put a stake in the ground and bring technology here to Ohio State. And they kind of gave me an offer I couldn't refuse, and been there for 11 years and primarily focused on technology, but obviously that blends well into, the agronomic piece of production ag as well.
Yeah, and all jokes aside, Ohio State University has one of the leading ag programs in the world. I mean, they're real on the real cutting edge of innovation in agriculture, and you've been a big part of that, leading a precision agriculture program there. Talk a little bit about your work, and maybe as you do, segue into your work in sustainability in cover crops, and how you're making that connection between engineering, precision agriculture, and regenerative farming practices like cover crops.
Well, I'd say first, man, upon my arrival at Ohio State, you learn very quickly what drives people's perceptions and interests, and that was the Lake Erie algae bloom. And so that was at the forefront at my arrival at Ohio State, was water quality. What are we going to do at the farm gate to improve that? So
I know about that high level, but for folks that may not know about it, what was the Lake Erie algal bloom? When did it start? What
Yeah, I would say, just a quick history of that. We could go back and talk about water quality in the lakes. But basically through the Clean Air Act, we really haven't improved water quality and so, but I'm going to say in the 2010 era, roughly, it just started to be these big blooms in Lake Erie in the summertime, and really affected the recreational supports, fishing. It really had a negative effect on all
nutrient loading.
Yeah, right? and they were basically pinpoint dissolved reactive phosphorus at the time as the real contributor. We had cleaned up the lakes, but then we had these concentrations that allowed these algae blooms, or this algae bloom to prosper, and all of a sudden it was affecting the habitat and the recreation around the lake. And so they pointed a lot of the frustration at farming or agriculture. And so what are we going to do? And so obviously, as is prior to my arrival, that there was a lot of high level meetings, and said, okay, we're going to have a 40% reduction in terms of loss from farms and things like that. And so, okay, we got 10 plus years to get that done. What are we going to do? And so we went right to work. And so I just walked right into that. And so found things like variable rate technology and subsurface placement was another big thing that we did a lot of research on, but thinking about putting nutrients subsurfacely, still trying to promote things like no-till in that process, but with potential stratification, can we put nutrients? And so if you fast forward to today, we're doing more things like placing fertilizer with planters. Obviously, that's going down with the seed, but subsurfacely, and then we're doing some strip till and subsurface placements with fertilizer. I got involved in all that and looking at ways that technology could really improve. In my mind, phosphorus was at the forefront, but we did a lot of nitrogen work as well. How can we improve the use efficiency, uptake by plants, and then loss from fields, And
what's been the end result for the algal blooms on Lake Erie? What's the current status?
Yeah, we definitely are continuing to have any kind of, we can't control weather and Mother Nature and things that happen, but we've definitely, just in the 10, 11 years that I've been there, I think we've made pretty significant gains in helping growers look at how they manage their nutrients and how they place their nutrients within the operation. And so in recent years, it's been really cleaned up. We haven't had a significant algae bloom. That doesn't mean that, in 26, we could have a certain weather pattern that comes out and it could happen again. But as we look around, I get involved in a lot of studies. We've got farmers, at least acreage-wise or field-wise, 60+% of them are using variable rate phosphorus management today. Interesting enough, it varies on their nitrogen and how they're managing nitrogen, but, it's not 5% looking at new ways of managing nitrogen on corn in particular. Wheat would be a secondary crop, but they're looking at new and contemporary ways of helping improve their application. A lot of that, in my opinion, has stemmed from moving from putting so much fertilizer down in the fall or thinking about trying to do that in a short window in the spring, which is followed by a heavy rain, but moving more of our nutrient applications in season. And so we have these technologies today that allows us to do some of that. And to me, I think that's been a big movement in Ohio, is moving out of those windows where we have high risk, high loss risk, to trying to do that more planting or within the growing season.
Yeah, obviously Lake Erie is an example. We do have serious nutrient loading issues in our water systems all across the country, whether it's the Gulf with hypoxia in the Gulf or Chesapeake Bay or Lake Erie. And every time these pop up, agriculture's often blamed. Probably sometimes we get more of our share of the blame than we deserve because nutrients come from lots of places, not just agriculture. But I try sometimes in where I live, sometimes farmers can tend into whining a little bit, like we're getting more of our share of the blame than we deserve, which is fair. But we also, there's something to be said for us being the best stewards that we can. And isn't it amazing how quickly in some of these areas farmers have adopted new practices and had tremendous impacts on the long-term sustainability of our water resources? The Chesapeake Bay is recovering amazingly fast. It sounds like the same is happening in Ohio.
Yeah. Yep, and I take the stance that they do get blamed probably more than they deserve, but we can all do better.
Absolutely.
We can all do better, and we are demanded, in my opinion, kind of the high level thing that we talk about is we've got to be more efficient. Whether you like that or not, we got to be more efficient, and that includes how we manage our fertility, and we got to continue to have prosperity of our farmers. We got to still grow the crops and maybe grow them at a higher order in terms of yield or in ways that we have higher quality in some cases, depending on the crop. That's just society's demand, and be transparent in how we do all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it is fair to say that agriculture does get more of the blame than it is due. But man, we're going to be in a much better position to make that case if we do everything we can to be the best stewards that we can.
And so I'll say one thing, Ben. So I will say in the state of Ohio, the commodity organizations and environmental groups have come together. Not all of them, but 4 in particular. We have formed an entity called OACI, okay? And that's a nonprofit. And we've been doing, and I've been the part or the liaison from Ohio State driving this. We survey watersheds in terms of practices being adopted. And so we were at the Huck 8 level. We're at the Huck 6 recently to do the whole Western Lake Erie Basin. We're just getting those results back. And one of the things I would tell you is exactly what you said. It is amazing that farmers have responded and are doing the things that they've been asked to do as far as it relates to fertility, manure management, being cognizant that, hey, we've got to do better. You know, is there areas that we see additional improvement? Absolutely. But if you holistically look at our surveys, we ask almost 40 questions where we go to a field for a specific year and we ask, you know, how are they managing P, all these questions. And then we summarize that. But it's my general thing is farmers have responded and are doing the best management practice. But there are areas that we can still improve on. But those surveys, the last 4 years, that have really highlighted that we've seen growth of use of things like cover crops, really thinking about how do I better manage my P and my nitrogen, you know, what kind of water management structures am I using to help keep water on the field or keep, nutrients on the field, you know, those things are being adopted by farmers. And the way we do that survey is it doesn't matter who you are. We're going to a field. It's a randomized selection of fields. So we're not only seeing maybe people enrolled in programs, but we're also seeing voluntary usage as well, which is important in my book.
And you know, that people ask me all the time, this new buzzword in agriculture, sustainability or regenerative, farming. Is this just a fad? And my response is always, well, the words may be a fad, but learning to grow more food, more sustainably with, in the future, less land and less water, because that's the future that we have in front of us. That's something farmers have been thinking about forever, at least since the Dust Bowl. I mean, farmers have been every year doubling down on farming more efficiently and reducing impacts on the environment. And that's not going to go away. You know, Aldo Leopold, who was a early leader in conservation, wrote one time that the oldest task in human history is living on a piece of land without spoiling it. Right. And farmers have really taken up that task, but they're not doing it alone. They're doing it alongside of lots of support systems and resources like land grant universities. I'm a product of the land grant university system. It was educated through that system and worked there for many years and still do. And it really has been a critical piece in the success of American agriculture, and particularly this current focus on sustainability. And you all at Ohio State are doing a lot of research to help support farmers' adoption of regenerative farming practices. Talk a little bit about your plot research, what you're doing, and how that's helped farmers in Ohio.
Well, I'd probably draw everyone's attention directly to our eFields program. It's our eFields program, very generically, is an on-farm research network, if you want to think of it that way, where we're actually doing projects on farm in fields with the production practices that farmer or farmers may be using. It's unique. We just in fact today is arriving our 8 years of reports, our 2025 eFields report. Embedded in that is all kinds of projects, from evaluating technology to thinking about sustainability and water quality to agronomic type questions that farmers may have. But the key to that is a win-win scenario where a lot of times we're getting connected and have quite a bit of industry support that could just be kind of in-kind contributions, seed, product, whatever, to maybe some financial, depend on their interests. But that has really opened our eyes, because we're working sometimes somewhere. We got 88 counties in Ohio. Most years we're at 50%, if not more, of those counties where we're doing projects. And in a lot of those counties, we're doing multiple projects. And so it's really cool, because I say it's win-win-win. We give farmers answers. we allow the industry to learn or local people to learn in that process, and then you allow us to learn. And so we build and so my belief as we go more digital in the world is we as land grants need to be part of that. And the only way that we can be part of is one of the key significant ways is we've got to be on farms, working with growers and trying to capture, not only doing these studies, but helping them with their data and what can we use that data for them. That's going to inform us as science, because I think, I could sit here and ask a lot of questions, like high level questions, scientific questions about potential challenges we see in the future. How are we going to answer those? How are we going to answer those when we don't have the research dollars at hand probably to go after to really critically investigate and have answers? How are we going to do that in the future? And so I see as an opportunity, and the reason we built the eFields program is we need to be fluid on how we're doing our science. And we need to be working on farms within different production systems regionally. And I'm also a believer that at some point we'll have to move away from one size fits all type of recommendations across the state to more, hopefully, site specific recommendations. We could sit here and I use fertility. And again, I hear at Ohio State from farmers, well, you guys did that fertility research 50 years ago. That's not applicable to today. Okay. All right. Well, let's test that. Let's test that. Let's talk about that, and let's come up with something that's a protocol, and let's test that. And that's what eFields is about. I see a future in the land grant institutions where we basically have built this, we'll say, a database that you just keep adding data to each and every year. And you can begin, whether I'm the fertility specialist, I'm a plant pathology specialist, I'm sustainability, water quality, I can mine that information and provide suggestions, if not be contemporary on making recommendations on fertility, seeding, the things that we're responsible for, both to the farmers, but also for our policymakers.
And what's so cool about that, John, is you're doing that collaboratively with farmers.
100%.
So it's not like you're a nerd, a nerdy research guy going out and doing stuff without the context of the real world. So you're there alongside farmers, asking questions and doing research to generate answers to today's problems.
In leveraging our extension system, you and I would know what an educator is, but most people would see that, well, you got a 4-H person in your county, you got what we call an A&R person in the county, allowing them to be part of that as well. They're kind of like the PI, if you want to think of it that way, for a lot of these, where they're working with the farmer, helping them collect data and addressing. We're just helping from a scientific kind of high level, the faculty involved. We may be doing similars, but we're helping them with the analysis and making sure that they're following protocols that we think are scientifically sound in order to answer those questions.
Yeah, and that collaborative science is so powerful because it helps inform the work that you do with real world practicalities, the issues farmers are dealing with in the field every day that you may not be aware of. But it also has benefit to farmers because, I'm a scientist just like you and I. We both came through the, traditional scientific training through land grant universities. And I've gotten really interested the last 10 or 15 years on science communication. And
100%.
as our understanding of the world becomes more complex and everything becomes more complex, and we've got to figure out as scientists how to communicate that back to people like farmers. Because there's a chasm, there's a huge chasm there. But doing this kind of collaborative research seems like a huge step forward in that.
Yeah, and so we set out in 2016 to initiate this program. Not everyone's involved. You don't have to be, but we probably have 60 individuals within Ohio State, specifically our College of Ag, that participate and support that. And we're in our 8th year and already starting to, 9th year. We're starting to talk about what the 10th year. But this year, for the first time, some things to think about from a sustainability conservation. I'm really excited about the work we've done around soil health and what we can, and we have kept it very simple. We were challenged by growers in the state of Ohio. I mean, they were not kind to us when we were sitting in the room and said, we want to figure this out. Can you help us? And it's like, you either say yes or no. Don't be, wishy-washy. If you say yes, then we expect an answer from you. And so we went on a 5-year exploratory, doing a soil health study. It was basically a survey of fields around Ohio. I've never seen anything where you can really leverage and the synergy of farmers and extension industry coming along, because we probably are over 1,000 fields sampled in that period of time, and with leveraging, not paying people just did it, and we had a protocol but we covered the costs, but we did it at a very feasible time when we're very tough to get financial means to really dig into some of these questions.
So you're looking at lots of questions through those research plots.
Yep.
Let's talk about one specifically, and that's cover crops.
Yep.
So can you tell me in 3 or 4 sentences, high level, what have you learned? What has that research produced in terms of cover crops? Well, if a farmer says, hey, tell me, what have you learned about cover crops through this research? What would you say? So
I'm going to probably caution you, my wording might be a little off when I described it. I'm just going to kind of keep it simple here. So when we looked at that data amongst the other data, cover crops have the ability to build the soil carbon. Obviously, a lot of times we talk about organic matter, and our study would have showed that there's opportunity as you increase each of those. Okay, that you get a few things happening. Number one, infiltration improves. Number two, obviously that's water retention as well. We all know that. But in particular, what we brought to the table was the connection to what that meant yield-wise to our corn and soybean producers. And so there's we're turning this data into a journal article, which you would appreciate to kind of solidify it. But we showed the trends of what building those in the context of using cover crops, as in particular to build your carbon and organic matter, what it would mean to a Ohio farmer. And that gave them the premise now, especially in particular when we talk about soil health. If I'm here, what do I need to do here in cover crops as part of that portfolio, if not the primary means of getting them from A to B, and meaning B, I'm improving my soil health, I'm improving my, the activity of the soil, which ultimately leads to more yield and hopefully profitability for that farm. That would be a big one.
Before we keep digging in, let's talk about Farmers for Soil Health. This is a program established by farmers for farmers, focused on strengthening soil health practices such as planting cover crops to enhance the environment and profitability of farmers. Through this podcast, which is in partnership with the Soy Checkoff, Port Checkoff, and National Corn Growers Association, we dig deep into sustainable farming practices. We're bringing you tangible, experience-based, and research-backed information that can help you enhance your land and your bottom line. If you're enjoying this so far, check out our other episodes, the ones that are already posted and the ones that will be coming in the future. So John, your research in a nutshell has shown, like what lots of other universities and research programs have shown, cover crops can be a real tool to farmers in their operations, whether it is they're looking for opportunities to increase water infiltration or manage nutrients or reduce erosion, or manage weeds. It can be a real tool, but a lot of farmers are still struggling with how to incorporate it into their operations for a variety of reasons. And some of it's just lack of experience. Some of it, but it does seem like there's 2 or 3 or 4 common themes that I hear from farmers, like these particular pinch points, of incorporating cover crops. And one of those is planting, having the time during very narrow windows, to get cover crop, seed in the ground and established. And that's something you have done a lot of work on, using precision ag drones particularly to help with that issue. Can you talk a little bit about technology and how you see that come into play in helping farmers use cover crops?
So there's probably 3 things, right, that's really challenging. Time's number one. I don't have time in the fall, at least in our area, to get out and do everything else that I'm trying to do in the fall, harvest in particular, and effectively get a cover crop established. And so I not only have that time, but I'm up against this frost date time. Well, I may this year not be still harvesting in November. Well, I can't wait till after harvest. And so there's this, in my opinion, this frustration, at least that maybe people wouldn't describe it, but like, I just can't find the time. There's this ability to get out there and do it.
In the best of situations, there's a limited time.
Limited time. And you got the frost date, you're trying to, and so in Ohio, we've been trying all these different things, from aero applications to ground machines, high clearance ground machines, which again, we're going back through the crop one more time. People were worried about, well, now we're damaging the crop again. Well, there's that potential. And again, so there's these challenges. And so, 3 years ago, I would probably pinpoint 2022, all of a sudden this opportunity to use drones. And well, we can take that spray drone, pop the spray tank off, and we put a spreader on it. Didn't have a lot of capacity, but now there's this tool that doesn't require the time element. It does require someone to operate it. I won't argue that, but I can do it whenever I want, because I don't have to worry about a high clearance machine that costs me a bunch of money. I don't have to worry about a custom applicator and are they going to get to my farm, or do they have time, or what is that? I've also have folks in our area, typically custom folks that are running these drone companies, that can come and get my particular mix of cover crops out when I want to get them out. And so we moved all of a sudden from a lot of guys thinking, well, I do that post harvest, to I do now have an opportunity. And I can do it at a fairly nominal cost. I'm not saying there's not a cost to it, but I can at least get out there. So,
way cheaper than getting a planter to the field, and so many more options.
And worrying about trying to run the combine, get the grain to the elevator, all that stuff going on. And so now I can do that before harvest. And I can get someone to come in. And so we in Ohio, I always talk about mid-August. Again, it depends on the growing season, but we have from mid-August to early October to use these drones to get them out. And we've been doing that for 3 years, and it's just constantly growing all of a sudden.
Yeah. And who knows where it's going. I mean, drones are, they've just really come onto the scene in any practical way in agriculture the last 10 years. Imagine where this goes in the next 10, 20 years. But let's just talk about the mechanics. So I'm a farmer. I've never used drones to plant cover crops. What does this look like? What's the machine that I need? What does that cost? I go into the field. Do I have one drone? Do I have multiple drones? How many batteries do I have? Like, how does,
So we've grown these drones today that are available are pretty sophisticated. Honestly, Ben, you and I, there is legalities around it. You need to get your license and some certificates and keep it very up on that. But pushing that aside, I could teach you within hours, and with experience, it's not rocket science. That's how robust they are. But it's a large drone. Most folks would think of it as the spray drone. That's the word that a lot of people use. But any company building a spray drone today not only has a tank, but you can buy typically about $1,000 to $1,500, maybe a little bit more depending on the company, but $1,000, $1,500 additionally. You get a tank that has a spreader system on it, kind of like you'd think about just a nominal spreading system that you see about fertilizer spreader. And you can just go buy those. A drone today, most of the ones people are using are probably paying anywhere from $24,000 to $35,000. Obviously, there's some more high tech ones and bigger ones. You could be spending up to $70,000. But most of the farmers in my area are probably $24,000. You get a drone, you get 3 batteries, you get a charger.
So I spent $25,000. I spent $25,000 on a drone. Does that include the planter, the tank?
Normally, the tank is a secondary option that you got to get for the $1,000 to $1,500.
Yeah, so I'm up to 20,000,
30,000, right? Yeah.
So I'm interested in playing with this year, establishing cover crops.
Yeah.
I go into the field, me and my an assistant, my farm worker, or whoever's with me. How much can we plant in a day?
Well, so a couple of things that you got to know about the drones is, number one, charging the batteries is critical. They give you enough batteries you can run 24/7 essentially, but you got to recharge the batteries. And so to do that at the field, you got to have a generator. And so in that, you got to have a 220 volt generator, not a 120, a 220 in order to do the rapid recharge. And so they typically we can recharge these batteries 10 minutes or less.
And how long does the battery last?
Well, most of the flights with filled to capacity, probably no longer than 15 minutes, but you can still get.
So with a 10-minute window, you 3 batteries, you can keep the drone up all day long.
That's right. That's right.
And so then how much, let's imagine I'm going to the field. I'm going to go in the field for eight hours. I'm going to plant for 8 hours. How much can I get planted?
Obviously, that depends on the capacity of the drone, the size of the drone. But I would tell you somewhere in the order of people want like 12 acres to hours, 12
acres an hour?
12 acres an hour up to potentially 30 acres an hour with some of the bigger ones.
Oh, wow. So you're talking about potentially, with the bigger drones, a few hundred acres potentially in a day that you can plant.
100%.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, what an amazing think about a 70. You said some of the more expensive drones, 70,000, but sounds a hell of a lot cheaper than a planter to me.
It's and you can do it at any time. You get a rain that day. The big thing about cover crops too that's frustrating, at least in Ohio, is we get really dry falls. So you're always sitting there going, well, I want to get them planted, but I also got to have moisture to get them emerged. And so you're always playing that game. The great thing about these drones is you can deploy them almost anytime, not, during a rain, but up to a rain, it could rain and you could be right back out there, where a ground machine or trying to get an aerial machine is going to be pretty difficult. So our window actually expands in the utilization of this. I can be more efficient, more effective a lot of times with the drones. But yeah, you can get several hundred acres done in a day if you get going.
What an exciting time to work in agriculture. Someone who I'm a conservationist. I've always worked in conservation and agriculture, and man, the advent and the development of all these technologies is just going to help farmers increase their sustainability and incorporate new practices at a rate I don't think we've ever seen in our career. And we're just kind of getting started. It's hard to imagine what it's going to look like to be a farmer in just 20 years from now, with AI, drones, precision tech, all of this. What do you think it looks like to be a farmer in 20 years? Just say 2050.
Well, we'll have autonomous equipment, autonomous machinery running, no doubt about it. We're on the verge of potentially seeing that kind of cut loose a little bit. I think drones will be used a lot more within the operation, probably doing things that we really haven't even thought of yet. But I think from scouting and being more proactive on scouting, being more proactive on when we apply inputs, whether that's disease, pest, whatever kind of pest that you're dealing with, we're going to have more information more rapidly available in 20 years than we've ever thought about. And we're going to be able to respond at times that we never even thought we could respond. Because typically what happens is, traditionally we plant the crop, we do our spraying, within our normal application times, put out our fertility when we need it for that particular crop, and we leave, right? We just leave. But in the near future, when you think about the automation, not only on the ground machines, but potentially drones, we can be able to start being very proactive in terms of any kind of pest identification and be at the forefront of that and be very spot on where we go and apply. We see, evidence of that today with the things like the targeted spraying for weeds, but think about that for pest management too, disease management, where we see even sub-field level or prioritized fields where we need to go. And now I could maybe have a drone that just sits there in a box that gets deployed as needed in the timing that's needed to go out and put a fungicide on or do some kind of, just quick kind of spray application, whatever that might be. And in 20 years, it's not going to be the drone that's automated, everything else around it. Like, so you're just going to be typing in, hey, I need to, it says we need to do this. You type in the product, as long as it's loaded there locally, that it can be basically mixed and put in a drone. I see a lot more. And that's where we spend a lot of our time. It's not the drone. It's automating around the drone that Absolutely. when you land it, I don't have to have 2 people there to change the battery, refill, do these things. It's just done and we're basically allowing that farmer to really focus on the core competencies that they're going to focus on.
Absolutely, man. They're going to be able to cover so much ground, just like we have today. We've covered a lot of ground today, John, from the Ohio State University and our common background, land grants, to the collaborative research you all are doing side by side with farmers, helping them figure out new practices, and then using technology to do that. It's just been a real pleasure having you join the podcast today. Really appreciate your work and your leadership in this space, nationally.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, if this conversation has felt like your kind of talk, make sure to rate our podcast, follow us on social media, and check out our website, farmersforsoilhealth.com. Stay tuned here for more insights on sustainable farming practices. Until next time.